I will say this from like political speak. Part of the reason why the Republicans didn't do well is because of Trump.
So now let me use this point to transition to the other part of the conversation that I wanted to talk to you about, which is about the US elections, the midterm elections that was just concluded. You said something about the silent majority. Now, there was a lot of speculation just prior to the midterms that there was going to be a red wave, that the Republicans are going to have this massive victory in the House and the Senate, which turned out to be false. There wasn't any red wave. Now, a lot of that hinged on the fact that there was a silent majority, that the Democratic Party had obviously lost its mind for proposing these crazy policies that a lot of normal people would, not the ones screeching on Twitter and on social media, pushing this agenda. A lot of normal people would come out to actually vote against these crazy policies. But it turned out otherwise. It's almost as if it was a victory for the Democrats. So is there really a silent majority? Are we fooling ourselves into thinking that there is a silent majority because the facts are not bearing it out? So what happened? How do you relate it to the outcome of the midterm elections?
So there's two things. While there wasn't a red wave, there was a red shift. So for example, Congress is going red. And so Congress, because there's going to be more congressmen, so they represent more and more districts throughout the country. So that kind of gives you an idea as far as the full landscape of the country. And so, yes, there's definitely a shift red. Senate is a little bit different because it's very few in comparison. So that becomes about a whole bunch of other different things, how you campaign, who's the person that who's the candidate that you're uplifting, and all these different things. So I say that there is a silent majority when it comes to, as far as voting patterns, that did shift red for a variety of reasons. Also keep in mind, not every adult votes, right? And especially for the midterm. So while there wasn't a red wave, I think that the silent majority also includes the people who are just kind of like going about their business, working, who are apolitical, don't really care to vote, or maybe even live someplace that is relatively blue but says, what's the point? And I understand that. So yes, I do think that there's a silent majority. And I also include people who just aren't politically active, because when you talk to those people, they're kind of like, yeah, there's men and women. There's not 85 genders. Like, I don't even know what you're talking about. Like, they're not hooked into what we're hooked into and even know about certain things going on. So yes, I do think that there's still a silent majority. Now, I will say this from like political speak. Part of the reason why the Republicans didn't do well is because of Trump. And people don't like it when you say this, but any general election, you need people who are swing voters and your base in order to win. And especially for Senate seats, because there are so few Senate seats in comparison to congressional seats. So Senate seats are incredibly important that you pick a good candidate, right? Someone who is able to appeal to swing voters and appeal to the base. The base, what's funny to me is like the base will ultimately vote for whoever is put in front of them, right? You can see it right now with Herschel Walker. People are pretending like Herschel Walker is a great candidate, and they treat him with childlike expectations. Wow, he spoke pretty good today. It's like, he's supposed to be a senator.
The bar is so low for him that him just showing up, just speaking is seen as something exceptional.
Yeah, exactly. The bar is so low, and they're doing it because it's a team sport, right? They just want a Republican to go through. In reality, if Herschel Walker was a Democrat, they would say, look at this big buffoon idiot, just like how the Democrats attack. Like, this is part of the problem. But I say that Trump is part of the reason, because Trump had his hands all over this midterms. And I don't understand, even like someone like Tucker Carlson was saying, it's not because of Trump. Trump had his hands all over this stuff. It can't be Trump's win when everybody wins, but when people lose, it's not Trump's fault. Like, that's not how things work. When Trump says, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, Trump is literally trying to become the kingmaker for people, saying, I'm nominating this person, that person. And then when very important seats don't come through that Trump put his hands on, it's not his fault. It has nothing to do with Trump now, but the wins are his fault, right? Oh, without me, those wins wouldn't happen. So it's like, if the party that says accountability and responsibility have to hold Trump accountable for those losses. And when I see we had 200 some odd wins and 20 losses, well, guess what? Those 20 losses are some of the biggest losses that you had. Now you have to ask yourself, why did you lose those 20? Because someone said, it doesn't matter if Trump selected a guy who's the dog catcher in some red county. You know, I'm just being hyperbolic, but like, it doesn't matter if he picked some guy in a red area, like, and he just said, I think he'll win. And that was like the last push for the base to get behind him. But it matters in states that are purple, like Pennsylvania, when you get behind Dr. Oz, who is a shoddy candidate in the first place, and no one actually liked him. Like, even during the primaries, people were split. They didn't really like Dr. Oz, but Trump had selected him. Herschel Walker, same thing. Herschel didn't even live in the state of Georgia, right? He had moved there so he could run, which, by the way, I cannot stand. I think it's a shitty way of going about politics, that people could just move and then just run and say, I represent the state now. But ultimately, Herschel Walker is in a runoff. Why? Because he was a shitty candidate. Trump picked him. And honestly, and I'm going to be writing about this soon, we complain about Democrats performing identity politics. Trump performed identity politics with Herschel Walker. Like, what's the, like, I'm trying to be fair and logical. Why would you pick a retired football player to represent the Senate, right? You could say, oh, well, he was friends with Trump. Trump has a lot of friends, right? But why specifically would you pick Herschel Walker to represent the state of Georgia? And to me, like, it's no different than Joe Biden picking Kamala Harris. And yet we're supposed to pretend that Herschel Walker is this great candidate, and Trump picked him, and not say anything about it. But in the end, like, the right performed identity politics just like the left did when it came to Herschel Walker. They wanted a black candidate. Like, I want someone to tell me why Herschel Walker is a great candidate. Like, if they really believe in Herschel Walker, why is he a great candidate? And they can't tell you, just like they can't tell you why Kamala Harris is a great vice president. They can't tell you.
There are three things I want to tie with this. The first one is, for Herschel Walker, I think they were just playing a political game, which is allowed, in the sense that, the Democrats are fielding a black person, right? Mm-hmm. So we need another black person if we had to stand a chance to win. So on that ground, you've leveled out the playing field. Both of them are black. If the Republicans' candidate was white, he may be at a significant disadvantage because running against the black man in that regard, right? So we can look at it from that angle. That was why he was picked, which to me, well, it's a political game. It's allowed. Now, the other thing I wanted to bring up before I bring out the Trump part is that, from speaking with some other Americans, I understood that during midterm elections, the party who is in power at the executive level usually loses the House and at times the Senate. So when Obama was president, both houses flipped to the Republicans, right? And even during Trump's election. So it's almost pretty normal that something like that will happen. So it's not exceptional that the Republicans took the House. it would have been exceptional if they took both houses with very wide margins. So for them to not even take it in the first place is like going against the norm, considering that Joe Biden is a widely unpopular president. The economy is sort of in shambles. There's inflation, and with all this woke stuff, both houses was ripe for the picking. How in the hell did the Republicans not have that red wave? Because that seemed like a foregone conclusion. How the hell did it happen? Now we can say Trump. Yeah, Trump is one of the reasons, but there has to be some other explanation why they performed that badly.
I think Trump is a big part of it. I think messaging is a big part of it as well. And I'm still trying to, it's one of my article ideas in the near future, but the way, like, Republicans are generally older, right? And because I've been in the circles, I would say when you're in the circles, it's generally older. Are there younger conservatives? Yes, there are. But it's generally an older crowd. And I wonder if the anti-woke kind of vibe comes off as being anti-youth. Because for young people who, right or wrong, they're trying to, when Joe Biden says, I'll wipe away your student loan debt, that appeals to some younger people. Like, cool, I don't have to pay all this student loan debt. The Republican solution to that is pay your own student loan debt. Like, don't use the federal government to do that. But is that the solution, right? And how does that appeal to younger people? So I get the point I'm trying to get at is the young vote was a big, big deal as far as these midterms, because Republicans don't really have a solution for young people and their issues. And it's kind of true. What about the Republican message actually appeals to young people? How do they even try to reach to younger people to have their message heard? Who are their messengers? And here, that's one of the good things about like organizations like Turning Points. Turning Points is youth oriented. They go to college campuses. They appeal to 18 to maybe like 28-year-olds, that demographic, maybe even younger, 18 to 25. So there are certain aspects outside of the Republican Party, but what is the Republican Party doing policy-wise that would actually appeal to younger people? I don't know. I don't think so. So I think the Trump aspect of selecting certain people that were just terrible candidates in very, very key states, like Pennsylvania with Dr. Oz and Georgia with Herschel Walker, that was really important. And then you have other people who were associated with Trump loosely, directly, but for the person who's actually going to go out and vote in the midterms, they see this person as a Trump lackey, a Trump-esque, Trump associate, whatever you want to say. And people do not like Trump. Like, there's barely a middle ground when it comes to Trump. Either you love him or you hate him, right? Mm. And I'm one of the few people who are kind of in the middle ground. And for the people who hate him, they really hate him, and which means they hate anybody who's even associated with him. Mm. So when we talk about Herschel Walker, think about it like this. When people go to the voting booth, they, generally speaking, the vast majority of the time, they vote down ticket. Mm. Do some people vote Democrat here, Republican here? Yeah, but the vast majority of people vote down ticket. Kemp won as governor overwhelmingly, right? Wasn't close, overwhelmingly won. Yet we're in a runoff for the Senate. What does that tell you?
So people were making a conscious decision to not vote Herschel while they were picking Kemp.
I mean, and what's the difference between Kemp and Herschel Walker? Kemp is not friends with Trump. Trump always talks shit about Kemp, right? So Kemp is not a Trump associate. So on top of Walker being a bad candidate in the first place, and Trump's friend, so he's strongly linked with Trump and endorsed by Trump, and everything about him and his rhetoric is about Trump. And a Republican governor wins overwhelmingly, and you go into a runoff, like everything about that race says, duh, stupid, it's Trump. Like, it's Trump is the reason why. Even if they picked a better candidate, it probably would have still ended up in a similar situation. So I think people are missing that in certain states that are purple, right, can go either way, that are tough, like Pennsylvania. It's a purple state. The independents, the swing voters, you have to appeal to them. And a lot of the independents that Trump may have gotten in 2016 are turned off by Trump by now. Like I talk to these people all the time, 2 times Trump voters who says, I'm done with them. I want DeSantis. I want somebody else, right? Then they're not married to Trump is going to save society. And without Trump, we can't live. They're not with that anymore, or they weren't with that in the first place. They're tired of Trump. And I really wish people would understand this. If it matters that Republicans win, Trump is not the guy. And they have to, whether it's DeSantis, like right now, DeSantis is the hot guy right now. If it's somebody else, right, they have a better chance. But right now, DeSantis is the guy. If he decides to run, Trump is in trouble. And he should be. He should be in trouble. But if DeSantis decides not to run and the Republican Party just keeps moving forward with Trump, the Republicans are going to lose. Like,
so now I was a Trump supporter until Trump announced to rerun for election. I mean, since 2016, I've been a big fan of Trump. You know, Trump. I felt he was this fantastic candidate who was fighting the establishment, who was so anti-woke, he wasn't this sanctimonious politician who was trying to prove he was perfect and all that. He was a human being, and he just wore his humanity and his flaws and everything, and he was unapologetic about it.
Right.
Now, during the last election, during the last general election, after Trump lost, I was praying so much that Trump should just concede this election, go away peacefully, then try to rerun in 2024. But when January 6th, it was January 6th, right? When January 6th happened, I was like, no politician should be able to survive this. Whether or not it was his fault, no politician should be able to survive something as scandalous as this. Because if he had considered earlier on, there is no reason why people would want to go to the Capitol to do things like that. Or at least he could have had some alibi to say, you know what, I had already considered, so there is no way I encouraged something like this, right?
Right.
Number 2, I was still the strong guy, but I just had it at the back of my mind, like, guy, please do not run again. Do not run again. Because if he runs again, he's going to lose. The first time, nobody knew him. He was this upstart who was just coming to shake the political scene, right? So he had something going for him. Now people know him. Now people know the stuff is made up of, and a lot of people are turned off by it. And I don't see him. He's not the Messiah. He's not the one to save the Republican Party. And I say it categorically that if Trump runs again, even against a senile Joe Biden who cannot string 2 sentences together, Trump is going to lose. And if he's so unaware that he wants to run, he's so unaware, and the Republicans actually give him the platform, they're going to lose big time, maybe by a bigger margin this time. So the other thing that broke me was when he started attacking Ron DeSantis. I was like, damn, this guy is just a child. I mean, why? It seemed like fun when he was attacking the Democrats and all that, but when you're doing that to people within your own party who haven't done anything to you, it just seems like you want to take control of everything, and anyone who disagrees with you, you have to attack them. So I think it's a bad move for the Republicans to go forward with Trump, because he's going to lose. And if I were American, even though I had supported him until yesterday, if I were American, I tell you I was going to vote against Trump.
Yeah, I'll say this. One thing I can't stand is when people say that Trump is not a politician, he's a businessman. That is a rhetoric for 2015, right? When he was running. Like, he was the president for 4 years. Yep. He's been selecting candidates. He's a politician. Like, no, it doesn't get any more politician than that. So you can say, like, I like his style. I like this about him. I like that. But that's fine. but don't erase his 4 years of being the president and his years after being president, being heavily involved in the Republican Party. Like, he's a politician. So, like you said, that mystique of unknown, that Trump was giving it to the man, so to speak, when it came to like Hillary Clinton and saying the things that people were like, oh, snap, I can't believe he said that. Let's give him a shot. Let's see what he does. All that is gone.
Yep.
And so it's like, all right, well, let's see what you can do. And listen, there are parts of his administration that I'm like, I think he did a good job. If it wasn't for COVID, I actually do think that he would have won a re-election.
Won. Yeah.
Because
I'm positive about that.
Because I have two rules about politics that seem to be true. You don't mess with people's money. You don't mess with people's kids. Right? Those aren't good things. As long as people's economics are good, they'll vote. They'll vote for whoever's in office. Right? Even the people who are lukewarm on Trump, if their job's good, the economy's great, and the money is flowing through, they'll vote for Trump again. Right? COVID messed things up. COVID put a whole shake in the entire system, and it was unprecedented. So that became kind of like an area where the economy wasn't great, his fault or not, or whatever, but the economy wasn't great. So now his other flaws rose up. And so now people are looking at all different types of things about him, his rhetoric and his style and things like that. But I think you're right. I think it's a losing effort to put Trump back out there. Right now, I don't really know that many people who are gung-ho about Biden. Like, Biden doesn't motivate people. This last election was about, are you with Trump or are you against Trump? It was a referendum on Trump, without a doubt. Biden didn't campaign. Biden sat in his basement. And when he did come out for a rally, 20 people showed up. Like, this wasn't about Biden. This was about Trump. And so when Trump can't beat a senile Joe Biden, who's not even campaigning, yet we had a record turnout to elect Joe Biden. And someone will say, oh, ballot harvesting and all this other stuff. Regardless, it shouldn't have been close. To me, it shouldn't have been close. To me, it should have been Barack Obama versus John McCain. It shouldn't have been close, but yet it was. And if there was cheating, if there was ballot harvesting or whatever, then that shouldn't have been the thing to put it over the edge, in my opinion.
Exactly.
But he lost. He lost to a senile Joe Biden. And so now the question is, well, why did he lose a senile Joe Biden? It's because a lot of people don't like Trump. And now what I am seeing just from the political climate, even people who are hardened supporters of him are turned off by him. And the possibility of basically having a better Trump, like Ron DeSantis, so to speak, right? There's very similar policies, very similar outlook on things without the baggage of Trump, right? Ron speaks when he needs to speak. He speaks, he's above the fray. Even when Trump went after him and the reporter asked him about it, he didn't even give a direct response to Trump. He spoke about it in a very general way. He's like, listen, people are going to come after you. That this is the game. This is what happens in politics. I'm focused on doing X, Y, and Z. That's what you actually want to hear. You want to hear this stuff. And I think people are so used to the chaos from Trump that they forget, like, we actually don't need 24 hours a day chaos. Like, we should have some normalcy. We should have certain things. And you don't have to have chaos to have a restoration of the country. So I completely agree with you. I think that Trump, well, he already said he's going to run now, but I think Trump is going to lose if he's the nominee. I think it's going to be if we're all assuming that DeSantis is going to run. Assuming DeSantis does run, it's going to be a tough primary. But I think DeSantis is savvy enough to where I think like the comparison I have is when you see someone who is irrational next to someone who is rational, it stands out.
Yeah.
And Trump has gotten older. Trump is like when the old band comes through town and they play the oldies, like they play the hits from 40 years ago. He's like, we're gonna lock her up, right? Yeah, it's just like it's the same kind of thing, same stuff. You've heard it before. And DeSantis is the younger, fresher guy who is more rational, who won't get in the mud with him. He doesn't need to get in the mud with him. Something about DeSantis, if there is a primary between them, I actually think that DeSantis has a really good shot of winning. That's what I personally think. I think at some point throughout that primary process or leading up to the primaries, Trump is going to shoot himself in the foot multiple times because Trump always shoots himself in the foot. But now he has someone who is competent, someone who is popular, and someone who can deal with it. Like when Trump ran in 2016, the Republicans were just laughing at Trump that he was there, and everybody was eating up Trump. And then what happened after that? Everybody tried to become Trump, and it didn't work. Like it just looked stupid, and he looked like the ringleader. But those days are long past, and a Trump versus DeSantis debate would be very, very interesting. It'd be very interesting.
The thing is, Trump is a child. Trump has lost his mystique. Trump had his turn and he couldn't even drain the swamp. He was too busy picking fights with every reporter, too busy picking fights with he's just so thin-skinned. And I was watching Candace Owens a few days ago where she was talking about the time Trump got angry at her. And from the whole conversation, I was like, damn, Trump got angry with Candace because of Candace trying to defend Trump, reporters twisting her words, someone feeding it to Trump not bothering to even find out whether what he was being told was true, then being rude and saucy towards Candace the next time he saw her. And this is someone who's always got your back, who's always supported you. So which just goes to show that the guy is such a narcissist that he can't see beyond himself. If there's anybody who's been so pro-Trump, it's Candace Owens, right? So for Trump to be rude to her because of something that he heard about her, which she was even trying to defend him, right? But somehow it was misconstrued and it was fed to Trump, and Trump would not bother to verify that this was, even if that was true, that's not enough to just kick someone who's been with you all this while. It just seemed like he's so selfish, he's so self-centered. And after he won the election, there was one thing that first troubled me about him, even though I now brushed it aside and was like, they were attacking him too much, so I had to be by him because I felt he was the underdog. But when he started attacking his own intelligence agency, I was like, whoa, what the hell is going on? You're the president, right? You shouldn't be talking trash about your own intelligence agencies, especially to the press. It's like you're the man of the house, but you're talking trash about your family. It didn't really sit well with me, right? With Trump. So I just feel that as he gets older, he's becoming more of a child. If you listen to Trump when he was 30, 40 years old, guy was articulate, guy was on point. He was so good. There was this Oprah interview I saw of Trump when he was about 40. This guy was on point. But now he's, damn, I don't know what happened to him, but no, Trump is a child.
Yeah, he's living up to the character of Trump. But also, I think this is actually who he is. I think part of the problem also, he sees politics like he sees celebrity. That's why, for example, that's why he chose Dr. Oz. He said him being on television for so long means that he's popular. So he thinks that translates into votes because he thinks that's why he won. And it's not why he won. he got noticed because he's famous, but he won because of other things that he was saying. And when Dr. Oz copies your talking points and then puts a Dr. Oz glaze on it next to a billboard, a studio billboard, just kind of like it's not the same stuff, man. So I mean, listen, Trump has his flaws for sure. And you actually mentioned how he didn't drain the swamp. He hired the swamp. And every time I bring that up to people, they're, oh, well, I mean, it's like, but he did. Like, he hired John Bolton, who's a warmonger, who is part of the swamp, who works for think tanks, who try to create wars and find ways to take resources. Like,
he hired Fauci.
He didn't fire Fauci.
He hired Fauci.
Fauci was already in that position for decades.
Okay.
But when the pandemic kicked off, Fauci took the forefront because we had a national emergency. So, but there were talks of him wanting to fire Fauci, but he never did. And now he's like, I should have done it. But listen, even without Fauci, there's so many questionable hires. Anthony Scaramucci worked there for a week. I mean, like, it's just so many different things that were questionable. People that he hired who are part of the swamp, as he calls it, he hired these people. He hired people who said nice things about him on television.
That's his metric. That's his metric, because he's a narcissist who says nice things about me. And if you immediately you fall out with him, then you're a bad person. He just kicks you out. How do you run politics like that? How do you lead like that? How do you lead with your skin? He's feeling the temperature of the room with his skin and just making decisions based off of it. Who says nice things about me? Who says terrible things about me? If you say nice things about me, you're my ally. You say terrible things, if you're critical about me, then you're out.
But see, and that's actually my biggest gripe when I hear like hardened Trump supporters say that nobody was loyal to him. Let me tell you this. First off, even the Trump supporters will acknowledge that he's a narcissist, right? So we're not disputing that. But Trump is the most disloyal person that I've ever seen in politics, right? Because as soon as someone challenges him, he not only fires them, but he kicks them on the way out and he slanders them. Omarosa was supposedly his personal friend for years and fired her. She says questionably fired her. And then what does he do? He kicks her on the way out, right? That's his loyalty. Michael Cohen got caught up in some stuff because of Trump. What does he do? Cohen's looking for help. Trump doesn't help him. He's like, what the hell, man? So Cohen starts to talk. He's like, he was a terrible guy anyways, blah, 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 blah. It's like, he was looking for your help, man. Where's the loyalty from Michael Cohen? He wasn't there. Like, there's so many different people that you could say that Trump hired and kicked him on the way out. And I'm just like, Trump's not loyal to anybody. That's why, like, anybody who says something repeatedly over and over and over that they want out of somebody else, chances are they're not themselves. Mm-hmm. Like, if he says, I want loyalty, I want loyalty, I want loyalty, he's not loyal himself. Like, there's something about that. And also, last thing I'll say is, if we can acknowledge that he's a narcissist, then everything is about him first. Mm. So even the concept of America first doesn't exist for a narcissist. Now, he may do things that appear America first because it benefits him first. And I think people don't fully understand that. Even his supporters will say, yeah, he's a bit into himself. He's a narcissist, or he might be a megalomaniac a bit, but he does X, Y, and Z. And I agree with those things in America first. But I'm just like, but if you say he's a narcissist, like that, he's not a narcissist about certain things. Like that's a general state of being. He thinks about himself first. So it doesn't end with your politics. It continues with the politics. And he's supposed to be representing the country. But when he overtly sees himself first and will say, damn everybody else, because it doesn't benefit him, that should worry you. And he seems to be becoming more and more that way the older he gets.